All right, guys, welcome on back to the show. We're going to get into our final season outlook of this episode. We're going to be talking about the upstart Washington Commanders, and obviously, a lot of things happened with them last year. Not a lot of people expected the Commanders to be where they were, myself included. I didn't expect them to get to 12 wins. I honestly didn't even have them getting to 10 wins, but they exceeded myself and a lot of other people's expectations with a tremendous draft pickup with Jaden Daniels, obviously winning Rookie of the Year last year, and rightfully so. He was outstanding for a good chunk of the year. Started a little slow, had a couple of games, especially that game against the Bucks, the first game. He did not look great. Didn't look like the Jaden Daniels that we ended up seeing. But of course, his first game as a starter, you can forgive that. And they were 12-5 last year, second place in the NFC East, and of course they lost in the NFC Championship game to the Eagles. But more surprising about that whole thing is that the number one seed in the NFC last year was the Detroit Lions, and they went into Detroit and handled the Lions pretty well, pretty easily for the most part. I mean, the Lions made it look a little bit more respectable towards the end of the game, but the Commanders were dominating that game. Their offense was just doing whatever it wanted because that Lions defense, not only was it just shredded with injuries, but they didn't really have any answers to Jaden Daniels and his weapons. And that Cliff Kingsbury-led offense, the offensive coordinator, they were great. They had a lot of games like that last year. It wasn't just in the playoffs. It was, right after like the second or third game, you started to really see what Jaden Daniels could do. And his numbers speak for themselves. I mean, he had 3,500 yards passing, 25 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. He also added 6 touchdowns on the ground, and he was their leading rusher as well as, of course, their leading passer, but he was their leading rusher, had almost 1,000 yards, and so those numbers, that's about 3,500 yards, damn near 1,000 yards rushing as well. And then, of course, the 6 touchdowns rushing. So he ended up having 31 touchdowns total with just the 9 interceptions. So he was fantastic. Rookie of the Year, absolutely. And even in the playoffs, it didn't really look like it was a big situation for him, that the game was too big for him. He always was very, very calm and collected, very poised in the pocket, and very poised just overall in big moments. You could absolutely see what the Commanders really liked in him when they ended up drafting him. And I remember when they drafted him, the two quarterbacks in last year's draft, it was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, who was the better quarterback, who's the better prospect. I sort of always lean towards Jaden Daniels, and that's mainly because I'm a Gators fan. So in the SEC, watching him play against the Gators and watching him in the SEC anyway, I knew how good he was. Not to say that Caleb Williams wasn't, but, let's be completely serious here. The SEC, at least last year anyway, or the year that Jaden was, still with LSU, was a stronger conference than the Pac-12 was at that time. And, USC, it's a big school, and obviously Caleb Williams, was good, and he has his own things that he needs to improve on. But I think the Commanders won that out of the Bears Commanders, who won, who's the better quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels proved it, at least in his rookie season, and who knows, Caleb Williams could end up going on to having a better career than Jaden Daniels, but we don't know that. But Jaden Daniels had the better rookie season, of course, and he makes the Commanders look very, very smart by going ahead and picking him up. And offensively, taking a look at just their stats, their numbers, 5th in the league in points per game with 28, and they were 7th in total yards per game with just under 370, 3rd in the league in rushing, and 17th in passing yards per game. So obviously you want to see the passing yards kind of uptick a little bit, because Jaden Daniels, he's a very good runner of the football, and he also is a very good thrower of the football, but you want to see a little bit more production out of the passing game, but still not terrible numbers overall. I mean, that's about middle of the pack, and if you have a top 5, top 10 offense overall anyway, you can forgive a couple of the setbacks that you might get here and there. Brian Robinson is their running back right now. He's a solid running back. Obviously, they picked up Austin Eckler in last year's offseason, but he was kind of a mixed sort of player. I mean, he had about 400 yards rushing, and he had about 400 yards receiving. So he did a little bit of everything. It wasn't just running the ball. So he was effective in a sense, but Brian Robinson is their number one back. And maybe they go get somebody as a depth piece with just the quality of running backs that they have in this draft. You feel like you kind of owe it to your franchise to at least take a shot on one of these guys, maybe in the later rounds if there's a guy that you like. So wouldn't be surprised if they went somewhere in that direction in the later rounds of the draft. The addition of Deebo Samuel, I think, is very good for this offense. I mean, he may not be the guy that he once was when he was in San Francisco, but I know his numbers have declined over the past several years or past couple years. I mean, that's a combination of just the whole offense as a whole struggling because of injuries. And then, of course, Deebo had a couple of injuries himself. And I think a lot of other factors just kind of factored into him not playing particularly well. And, if you compare it to his, previous years where he's, in Super Bowls and in NFC Championship games, putting up crazy numbers and all that. But I think a whole new, fresh start for Deebo Samuel will be a very, very good thing for him. And I think he's going to be motivated. And, of course, he's got one of the best receivers in the league to take some of the pressure off of him. And you got Terry McLaurin. He's going to draw most of the attention. But Deebo Samuel on the field will draw some of that attention, and that'll give Terry McLaurin extra opportunities as well. And Deebo, who also is a very good route runner, he can get open underneath and things like that. So I think that'll be a good tandem for them. So good offense there. Obviously, you want to see improvement every single year, but, that's pretty good for a rookie head coach, or in terms of his first year. He's not a rookie head coach, but he's first year in Washington. But the rookie quarterback, a lot of young players. Their biggest thing that they need to do this offseason is take care of that defense. The defense was one of the worst in the league in terms of stopping the run. They were 30th in the league. They gave up a lot of yards on the ground. They need to shore up that defensive front. Their secondary was decent, though. They were pretty solid, ranking third in the league in passing yards allowed per game. So, some good things there. You had the Mike Sanistro, that acquisition, of course. He ended up being a lot better than some people might have thought. He ended up being a pretty solid secondary player for them, especially in the playoffs and all that. But their biggest needs, they need an edge rusher. That's really the biggest need on defense. They need somebody that can push the pocket and, get to the quarterback and allow that talented young secondary to make plays on the back end. There's plenty to choose from in terms of edge rusher in the draft. They can go a number of different directions depending on who's available. I doubt that anybody like an Abdul Carter or maybe Jalen Walker possibly is available then, but Jack Sawyer as well from Ohio State. Any of those guys, but I don't think Abdul Carter. I think Abdul Carter goes very, very early. But any of those other two guys I think would be a decent addition to that defense. I could also see a late round running back, like I said, Robinson being a solid running back and Austin Eckler, being the other running back there. I could see them going running back with the later rounds. So we'll see what they do there. But, they lost De'Ami Brown, their wide receiver in free agency. They lost him to Jacksonville. So you feel like they're probably going to add another depth piece there as well, whether that's late in the rounds or not, or maybe just a veteran in the free agency. I don't think it's going to be a guy that's going to step in and oversee like somebody like Luke McCaffrey, who's going into his second year, and he showed a little bit of promise last year as well. So he could end up being a pretty solid wide receiver, a good wide receiver 3. So then you would end up having a lot of really, really good players all at one time. So, maybe they added veteran for a cheap price. We'll see. But it's not as big of a need anymore because they have addressed a lot of their needs in the offseason. So, we'll see if they decide to, go anywhere else with the wide receiver. I think they will probably have the same record that they had last year. I don't think that it's going to be a super huge improvement in terms of record-wise. I think it's 12-5, but I still think that they could end up being a better team overall. It's just, that's a tough division, that you have to go through the Philadelphia Eagles twice. So those are 2 tough games right off the bat. And depending on what the rest of the division looks like, because typically with the NFC East, it's a different division winner every single year. So it was the Eagles last year, and we'll see if the Commanders can overtake the Eagles. Maybe the Eagles have a Super Bowl hangover since they lost several pieces on defense, and maybe the Commanders can sneak in and become the division winner, and maybe they can go further than that. Who knows? I mean, they got to the NFC Championship game last year when Jaden Daniels was a rookie, so it's very possible, with that offense, if they can play the way they did last year, especially towards the end of the year, and that defense gets a little better and they're able to rush the passer a lot better than they were and stop the run a lot better than they were, then maybe they could get over the hump and get past teams like the Lions or the Eagles or, whatever the Vikings end up being with J.J. McCarthy. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be fun to watch because that is the one thing about this Commanders team is that they were fun to watch last year because of that offense and how, dynamic it was. Another key piece, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, was, of course, them re-signing Zach Ertz. I think that is a sneaky good re-signing because he is a solid, reliable tight end, and every good quarterback needs to have that safety blanket, and that safety blanket is a good thing to have with Zach Ertz. He's got that experience, and obviously he's been in the system for a year already, so I think that's a good decision with them going ahead and re-signing him. Signing Bobby Wagner, I think, is a sneaky good move too, the re-signing of him, because he was a lot better than a lot of people might have thought he was going to be last year because, of course, he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt, but he's getting up there in age as well, so you don't know how good or how long you're going to have quality play from him, but he was at least solid last year, bringing him over, of course, from Seattle, but a good job getting him locked up too for another year. I think it wouldn't be surprised if this is his last year because he's been in the league for a while and accomplished a lot of things. He's got a Super Bowl and all of that. So, we'll see what he does at the end of next season, but still a solid, addition or re-addition to that defense. But so that's what I have for the Commanders. I got 12-5, possibly an NFC East title. That's kind of where I'm at with the Commanders right now. So we'll see if that ends up being true. Only time will tell. But before we go ahead and get into the rest of our show, we're just going to take another break, and we're going to talk about some of the mock draft picks that I have set up in our ongoing series. This one is going to be picks 26 through 30. And if you're wondering why I don't have picks 31 and 32 on this, that's because next show tomorrow I'm going to be doing the mock draft and the season outlook for the Philadelphia Eagles all in one segment. So I figured I would do that since the last two are the two Super Bowl participants. I feel like I'd give them a segment of their own and talk about each of those teams and what they might do in the draft, in terms of players and things like that. So we'll go ahead and we'll take another quick break, and we will be right back right after this.